Hello and welcome to Quilt Addicts Anonymous and the Free Motion Quilting series. This is our final show and tell. We're going to be looking at wavy lines and how I've used them in quilts. This is my favorite free motion quilting design, hands down, because it's easy and it's very versatile and it can look so cool depending on how you use it, or it's super basic if you want it to just be quick and easy too. So we're going to take a look at some ways that I've used it in my designs. I use it more and more recently, so you're going to see a lot of recent designs using this, and we're going to have a lot of fun taking a peek. As always, if you've somehow managed to get this far and you haven't actually started the free motion quilting course, we do have quilt kits available for you and stencil packs so you can just get those main 4 stitches down and then customize them to your heart's content. I hope you've gotten lots of really cool ideas on how you can customize them in your own quilting tops to bring them to life. And also make sure you grab the pattern. There's different instructions if you're working on a long arm versus a domestic, because you're going to be doing quilt as you go, or you're going to be putting your top together first and loading it on. So make sure you're paying attention to which one you are doing. All right, let's get started. I think I'm going to pull a basic one first here. There is not really a specific order here to any of this. I do believe that we have quilting videos on the majority of these. I don't think we have one on this one, but most of them we do. So this stitch, this is actually, you're looking at it from side to side here. So this is the top of the quilt and that's the bottom. So this one is called Reflection, and it is a pattern that we did for our Stashing with Stephanie Club. So it is fat quarter friendly. And this one was so fun to make because it's essentially just a giant parchello that you're making in rainbow fabric. So what could be more fun? When I put it all together though, I do almost all my quilting on the long arm. So if I were on a domestic, I could easily like swoop around and do this, because you're able to move the quilt a lot more easier to do those kind of serpentine lines. That is a whole nother story when you're on the long arm, because you're only ever working in the pass. So that would have meant like I would start my thread here and then I would maybe stop it here, and then I would have to keep doing that and working my way up and down the quilt, and that would just be a big pain. So what I did was I loaded the quilt on sideways, and that way I was able to quilt from basically top to bottom and just do wavy lines. And what I did is I did wavy lines over every single seam. So here's the seam, and then down the middle of every single one. I believe this is maybe like a 2-inch wide strip here finished. So essentially I have wavy lines about every inch of this quilt, but by segmenting that, remember we learned how to do that when we were talking about density, by first doing it down every single seam and then deciding, you know what, it needs a little more, and then going back and filling in between, straight down the center of each pieced row. That is going to just have even density all throughout. You can see a real even texture as you take a look at this. And I used a yellow thread because this was rainbow. It was fun, and you can have some fun when you have some fun, funky fabric. This one does not have a background. It is strictly 100% just color, and it's a fun one. So I believe Pippa Shaw designed this fabric. I love her. She's with Figo, and she always comes out with some cool stuff, and it's really bright and fun. So this one was fun, and it was quick. It was so fast. Like when you do something like this, even on the domestic, you know, you can kind of just whip it down, you know, just do your little bits and start off in the center, work your way down, and you can do the entire quilt that way. It's very manageable. And when you're on the long arm, left to right, left to right, left to right. My quilting machine does not like to go from right to left. So I'd start every single row on the left and work my way over. And that works out really well for me. So check that out. Again, super simple. This is about as easy as it gets. So this is a remake of Congruence that we did in my fabric collection, Nocturne. We still do have some Nocturne available. Shameless plug. This pattern is Congruence. It's available in my book, Fat Quarter Workshop, and it is a really fun one because you sort of split your colors into zones. So like we have like our teals and citrons, and then we have our darker blues, and then we have our grays here, and it just is like a riot of color all over. So it's a really fun one to do, but because there's no neutral, it means that you shouldn't necessarily spend a lot of time doing really complicated quilting because it kind of is going to get lost in the busyness of the quilt since there's no place for the eye really to rest. So what I did with this one, and we do have a video tutorial on this, maybe we can show some footage as I'm discussing it. What I did was I started at one end and I would start in the middle and I would go my line straight down, just my wiggly line, and go all the way from one end of the quilt to the other. Again, this is another quilt that since I wanted the lines to go from top to bottom, I loaded my quilt sideways in the long arm. Again, you could totally manage this on a domestic too, just going, you know, top to bottom as well. So then what I did was I went through and I did my outside lines. And again, I would do it, start at one end of the quilt, work my way all the way down, always crossing where these points came together. So it gets sort of wider as you come out and then denser as you come into the ends of those points. Then from there, you're just filling in. For this one, I decided I like the density of having two lines in between my outside line and my center line. So there's two here and two here. So again, you're going to start at one end, go all the way down and quilt that outside and then the inside middle, and then do the same thing on the bottom. So it's 7 passes per diamond. So that's kind of a lot. I'm always doing left to right, but it does go super fast because it's nothing too crazy. It's nothing too technical. You don't have to think too hard about it. It's just a wiggly line. And it is super fun. The texture of this is just amazing. And I use a celery green thread for this because it really, this citrony green is in almost every fabric that is in this quilt. And if it's not in it, it goes really well with it. Like it goes really well with this blue, it goes really well with this deep teal, and it just pops really nicely against the gray. So it just is fun and it works. And green is a neutral. You may not have been told that before. If you've watched my videos, I've certainly told you that before, but green is 100% a neutral. You can have fun with it and use it as a neutral in many instances. And this was a really good one. And like I said, this is just not worth doing anything super custom in because this fabric, there's a lot happening. You're not going to see it, but you will see the texture that you can create. And this just gives you a little something extra than just doing the plain wavy line from top to down. It just helps accentuate the shape of that diamond and just helps make that quilt design pop, because that's what we're about, right? We are about choosing designs that are going to elevate your top. And this does it. We've spent all this time making these pretty points, making these pretty diamonds. Let's do a design that will also accentuate that and help that pop and make your quilt as awesome as it possibly could be. All right, I told you Tree Star was coming back, so we're gonna take a look at that here today. So the last time we looked at this was in our swirls show and tell, and that was when I was doing the background in all the swirls. Now for this one, what I did was I did wavy lines throughout all the blocks, and we do have a video tutorial that shows you how I did this. First of all, this is another one where I loaded it sideways, because when you look at this, I'm able to work my way across and be able to fill in this entire half of the design, the diamond, without having to then move my long arm. And again, this is not as big of a deal if you were doing it on your domestic, because you can kind of smush things around. This is one where it would be very challenging to do it as a quilt as you go, because you either would have to put sashing in between all of these wedges for the design, or you would have to, I don't know, it would just be really challenging. This one will be hard. But it's definitely something you could do if you did one of the smaller sizes, or if you had a bigger setup, you could try and tackle this for sure. It is possible to do larger quilts on a home sewing machine. It just takes more out of your body, and you need to, if you really want to do this, you need a proper setup. You need a machine that is going to sit down in your table. You're going to need to have the weight of the quilt up on the table as much as possible. Maybe you got an extension coming out to help manage that weight so that your body is not so sore when you're working on it. So here's how I made this work. This was another one where I kind of had to get it done quick because all the stash and quilts I have to get done quick. So what I would have loved to do is do ruler work along all of these diamonds, but that was not in the cards for this one. So what I would have done was I would have started in the center, and I would have worked my way. Actually, I probably started out here. So I would have start here and travel down from point down, and then travel up, and then come down, travel, and then go over, travel all the way down. And basically, I'm just traveling along the edges with ruler work when I need to get to the next point. But what I'm basically doing is being able to go from point to point, and really, in this case, I could have flipped over and then come up and handle these, and then travel over and then keep going. And I'm just trying to create like the veins of a leaf coming out so that it looks like I've got wavy lines going all the way out to my points, even though they may be starting in different spots. So like these all obviously start here, but some of them are also going to start here and here and here. So check out the video if you want to see exactly how I did this, but you can see how you can use this wavy line structure to kind of unify the block, make it look like this big starburst. It's so cool the way it turned out, and kind of create, you know, take your cues from the fabric. I mean, there's a lot of foliage and plants in this. So to make it look like a leaf structure where you've got the veins going out to the edges of the leaves is a cool thing. And it helps accentuate the design of the quilt. It helps accentuate the design of the fabric. And then when you pair it with a alternate stitch that's at a denser scale, so it kind of dampens down that background, really makes this whole thing pop. So those are the things that I like to think about when I'm choosing a quilt design is, one, how much time do I have? What can I reasonably execute in the time that I do have? And then like, do I need to take shortcuts? Like, obviously I was not able to outline every single thing in here like I wanted to because I did not have the time to do that. But then also, how can I take and help keep the block structure separate from the background if I'm going to be doing a custom? This one I would totally call like serious custom. Some of them before that we've looked at have been more of like a light custom. This is definitely custom. And it's fun. It looks so cool. I love this quilt. I love how it turned out. Obviously, I would always love to be able to do everything that I want to do to something, but we don't always have the time to be able to do everything that we want to do. So I love how this turned out, and it's easy. I mean, you've seen the wavy lines that we've designed. They're not hard. They are not hard at all. It's just about planning your path and figuring out where you're going next. All right, this quilt is called Ultraviolet, and it is one of our Stash with Stephanie designs. No, we do not have any more of this fabric. I wish we could get more. It is Allison Glass. It is fabulous. We usually get in all the new Allison Glass collections, so you totally can make this work with a different one of hers later down the line, or maybe you have stash. But you can get the pattern on our website. So this one is a big star radiating out. And so we have both diamonds, that this is the block right here. And that is what I kind of wanted to accentuate when I put this together. So that way the wavy lines would just be working their way out all across when we put everything together. Now, this was a whole nother thing where I had different plans for this, but time was a factor. I would have loved to do this radiating wavy line in every single diamond in here. But when I got down to it, I didn't have the time to do that. So what I did instead, and we have video of this so we can show you guys, is I outlined every single block with ruler work. And then I went from top to bottom, traveled down to the middle. This is like when we're learning about density. You don't want to necessarily go to, you know, your quarter piece next. You want to go to your middle so that way you can split the difference later. Come all the way down. Then you can split your difference. And then do the same thing over here. Go to your half, and then split the difference, hit your quarters. Then from there, you can travel and outline the next block and repeat until you've made your way all the way out. Now for this one, I did do the same structure of wavy line in my backgrounds. That's because this background are actually pieced together as diamonds as well. So it was really easy to sort of maintain that shape and have it come out. And then from the back too, it's just really cool because the texture is just the same throughout the entire quilt, going all the way out, and it is just so fun. It's just, I love this quilt. And a lot of you guys love this quilt too. So that is our last quilt for our show and tell, except we are going to, at the very end of the series, we're going to take a peek at the finished quilts for both the Quilt As You Go and the long arm, so I can show you guys my own subtle differences between what I'm able to do with my best work on the domestic versus what I'm able to do with my best work on the long arm, because it is different. Because I'm on the long arm a lot more. So if you guys are just getting started on the domestic, or maybe you're just getting started on a long arm, or you're trying to do it yourself instead of computerized for the first time on the long arm, don't get all, you know, crazy with your expectations of what you think you should be able to do, because you're not going to be able to be fantastic right off the gate. There is a marked difference in the quality of my stitching on the domestic, where I do not sew on or not quilt on as often as what I'm capable of doing on the long arm. And so the more you practice, the more you work on your machine, the better you are going to get over time. And what you're learning here, how you are learning the basics, and then you are learning through these show and tells how you can use those basics to create any number of quilts. And I have probably 100 quilts behind me. I've quilted the majority of them, and every single one is a little bit different. It's very rare that I will do the exact same thing on a different quilt, but they are all the same basic kind of stitches. They are almost always going to be some variation of a stipple meander, a swirl, a loop-de-loop, or a wavy line, and then ruler work is my other favorite, which we didn't really cover too much in this video besides touching on it a little bit here and there. We do have it on our list of potential series classes to do in the future, so if you like that, make sure you let us know that that's something you want to see, and we can make that happen for you in the future. But have fun, let go of your expectations. The goal here is to get better every time you do something, to learn something new that you can apply to the next quilt, and to have the skills to bring your quilts to life and really have some fun with it. I mean, this could certainly have been a giant stipple meander quilt, but let me tell you, it would not have been anywhere near as cool if I hadn't taken those wavy lines and used that to help define the block, help define the quilt, and help draw that eye out with the wavy lines coming out. So it's really cool. It's really fun. I hope you guys have learned tons. And if somehow you've gotten to this point, you have not actually started at the sewing portion, remember that you want to get your stencil kit, so that way you have the lines to follow, so you can get these stencils and the stitches down, so then you can work on customizing them to your heart's content. We also have the quilt kits, and we are using fabric that is reorderable from Figo and Northcott. It is their solids, their Colorworks. Really great fabric to work with, and we can always keep that in stock, so we can always have it for you. And then make sure you grab your pattern. There are different instructions for if you're doing Quilt As You Go in your domestic versus assembling the top and loading it onto your long arm, so make sure you're following the right one for what you're doing. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this series. We've enjoyed making it for you, and I want to see those quilts. I want to see what you're working on. I want to see your samples. Tag us on the socials. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we are on TikTok. Show me what you're working on. Show me how it's inspired you. I want to see your samples from the class. I want to see how you've applied the skills in your quilts. I cannot wait. This is what we live for. This is what we do it for. We want to see how you guys take this and run. So make sure to tag us if you use any of this in your quilting, so that we can see how you are progressing and celebrate that with you. All right, until next time, happy quilting.